welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. Hey Dave, welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. How are we doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Enjoying being here and listening to you over in Manchester from over here in Michigan in the USA.
Nice. I keep forgetting you were over there, so we'll definitely touch upon that in a second. What I tend to do first, though, Dave, is I tend to ask my guests to pick 5 numbers from 1 to 100. So if you could do that for me, that'd be awesome.
1.
Okay.
8.
Okay.
12.
Yep.
13.
Okay.
And 42.
Perfect. We'll come back to them a little bit later on down the line. So I guess, yeah, Dave, I mean, what I tend to do is I tend to ask my guests to summarize up, a log line, a tagline about who they are. Can you remember what it is yours was?
Yeah, I had to work at it. I don't really like the idea as well, and it made me kind of think. But mine was pioneer to boldly go, and I kind of need the Star Trek music going there in the background. If you could superimpose that on afterwards, that'd be really cool.
I see what I can do.
No pressure though.
Yeah, no pressure whatsoever. Eh? So when we were in school and the teacher would come up to you and go, "Okay, David," because I'm sure we called you David. When you grow up, what is it you want to be? Can you remember what you would say when you was a child?
Yeah, it certainly wasn't David. That was my mum. My mum used to call me David when I was in trouble. I always knew I was in trouble when it was David. It was in the same way that when I was 11 and a half, I would be, or even if I was 11 and a quarter, it would be, "You're nearly David, you're nearly 12," if I was in trouble. And then the kind of the other way around, sometimes it would play you're only, you're nearly 12 or you're only 11. But yeah, what I wanted to do when I was growing up was be an Olympic champion. It was the time of Steve Ovett and Seb Coe. And Steve Ovett was my hero, and I sort of fell in love with running and the idea of becoming the fastest person in the world, even though I wasn't. That dream was a kind of a really big thing. It was also how I ended up becoming a teacher, or part of it was becoming a teacher was it was a 4-year degree, so it was an extra year of being able to fit more training in, and I'd love to have a sort of really professional reason for wanting to become a teacher and wanting to make a difference and all those things that I have really enjoyed, but at the time it was just all about running, really. That was all I cared about.
Nice. It's good to dream. It's definitely good to dream. So,
absolutely.
So I guess, I mean, we've spoken LinkedIn and stuff, and I think it was Amy Baval who introduced me to you. But maybe if you could, for the listeners, maybe give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour from kind of where you've come from to where you are right this second in your career, and maybe, give us a quick whistle-stop.
So yeah, I trained as to become a teacher, as I was saying, and I took my first job was only for 1 term, and I thought actually that's kind of good, because if I don't like it, it's not too long a time. But I realised I really enjoyed working with young people, and it was in a middle school. I was sort of teaching boys games. It's kind of surreal to think of the way they separated it all out in those days. I was teaching things like rugby, and I ran the boys' football team, although I did run a girls' football team as well after school. And then I had my own class as well, of sort of 9 and 10-year-olds. And I started to realise I loved it. And I've had the most amazing career, Danny, where I've just sort of gone on this lovely kind of circuit of doing different things. I worked in France for a little bit, sort of learning how to paddle, and I was hiring out pedalos and kayaks and Canadian canoes and things like that. So that was great fun. But yeah, I came back from France and got into teaching, and by chance ended up working with a group of young people who were kind of really challenging, some of whom had been excluded from their previous schools. And I kind of I was quite good at it, and not at first. At first, I just found it really confronting. But I think what you kind of get from working with the sort of more challenging kids is you sort of learn a lot about yourself as long as you're willing to sort of look in the mirror and realize that actually you can do something differently, because quite often those kids, it's harder for them to do that. They've maybe had really tough time growing up, and they don't just need one chance, they need lots of one chances. But yeah, that was a really pivotal thing for me, sort of working with those more challenging kids, and really wanting to make a difference to some of those kids, because I grew up in a way that was quite, I was pretty privileged in lots of ways, and my mum and dad were both teachers. My mum was from Moss Side, though, in Manchester.
Oh yeah.
And she had, she was the first person from her family to go off to college. She certainly didn't have a what you call a privileged background, and we used to spend all of our holidays going up to Manchester, and it was great. It was great. I got to appreciate the things that I had through her eyes, and really sort of valued that. So yeah, and I think sort of growing up, you get to see so many things, but you don't always realize how lucky you are, or you don't always have those frame of reference, because it's just your life. But that was one of the really great things about going up to Manchester, and not only becoming a Blue, because you used to hear that on match days, the roar of the main road. But yeah, really appreciating growing up by the sea and things like that. I grew up in Devon, and from there I sort of left teaching for a while. I did advisory work. I had a wonderful job where I worked in the Science Museum in Kensington. That was really cool. Working with a neuroscientist and setting up a sort of working neuroscience lab, and I was involved with developing the educational strand of that. That was really, really fantastic. And I was a head teacher I've been head of 5 schools, and that was again something that I've really loved doing, and building a sense of community through those places has been a real privilege. And I've started 2 schools from scratch. But most recently, I've been over in America, in Michigan, and I've just been offered a job to come and work here and work with some of the more vulnerable youth over here, sometimes in Detroit, but the company I work for, I'm going to be working for, they do some amazing things. So really excited to be having a new part of the journey as well.
Oh, nice. And I kind of, I've got so many questions I want to ask you about this, and kind of, especially talking about kind of, you set up 2 schools and stuff. But I guess going back into your log line, if you like, to boldly go. If you could break that down a little bit, why that?
I think it's that I've always loved trying to do things in a different way. That excitement of trying to work things out and I think for me, when I was first teaching, I was very shy and not very confident, and so there was that sense of that was so out of my comfort zone. Having a larger group of people, whether it was 30 kids or like taking an assembly. I remember doing that for the first time and my hands shaking. but it's that bit of trying to push to something a bit like, I suppose some of it goes back to that being a runner, and as a sort of an athlete, you're trying to push to get a personal best, to do something that you've not been able to do before, and seeing that progression. And I love that energy as well of a startup, of not knowing. It was great working with Bo, this neuroscientist at the Science Museum. And one of the things I realized about myself as a teacher, and I think it's true of lots of teachers, is that we kind of like to be in control. So if a teacher likes to be in control, a head teacher really, really likes to be in control. And it's really limiting, because you almost, if you're not careful, you start stifling the learning. And that's where working with this neuroscientist, Bo, he was most excited when he didn't know stuff. It was like, oh wow, that's really cool. Why is that happening? And he's just really insatiably curious when he didn't know things. So that's something I've been trying to really work on over the last, I suppose, 10 years, and part of why I've come to somewhere completely different that I didn't know, and how exciting that is. So that being a pioneer, starting a school from scratch, going to a new place, trying to push my own sense of boundary, not necessarily just what other people think is, because it's so personal, isn't it? But yeah, that's the pioneer part, and the boldly go. I think one of the things I'm really proud of is how I've grown to become sort of more confident in myself as I've grown up, and to push past the barriers, the limitations that I had in my head of, I need to get things right, or what if I get things wrong, and all of those kind of things growing up, which used to really worry me. And I really wanted to be James T. Kirk, and to have sport on my side in that big chair, and wobbling from side to side of the screen, or doing sort of judo rolls across the sandy floor. I love that whole program. I think it was one of the things. I've got some really great memories of being with my dad, and as a kid, and one of them was I used to be able to stay up later than my sister for half an hour and watch Star Trek, and so that felt like a really special thing. And he loved sci-fi, but yeah, that was so that kind of that's the boldly go bit there. I used to love the start of that program, and I can still go back and watch some of those episodes that I've seen over and over again, and still enjoy it just as much now.
Wow, it sounds like, just listening to kind of, your whistle stop tour and stuff. It sounds like you've been on a wonderful journey. I guess probably what the way I'm thinking is actually, let's touch upon kind of the school education system if we can a little bit, because I really want to get into kind of your, especially moving from, say, something like the UK to the States, and talking about these schools and stuff. But I guess from a school system point of view, my background is in learning development, so within the corporate environment. Yeah, I mean, the closest thing I've done to kind of schools kind of stuff was we have something over in the UK called National Citizenship Service.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I was kind of, they took me away for 3 weeks, and I had to kind of be like a mentor for 3 weeks to like a group of 20 kids, young adults actually, which was an absolute amazing experience. And I can kind of relate to that thing of you learn a lot about you, which was something I didn't think would happen, if I'm being honest. Yeah. Maybe it was my own ego, but maybe, kind of the school system is kind of always in debate, and the education system. And what is your general take on it at the moment?
That's that's a big question, and not trying to avoid it straight away. But I think when you were describing that bit about your experience of working with young people and learning things about yourself, it's also, I think so often we forget that learning happens kind of all the time, and those people that that have probably been your mentors, and or somebody that interesting you meet down the pub, or those people or experiences that end up shaping us, and our history then changes the way that we see the world. Those people who've impacted. That's nothing to do with school, and I suppose that's my take. That's my kind of link through really into the way that I see the school system, because so often it's about regurgitation of information, or learning something that you don't really apply in the real world or later on in life. And I can remember loads of lessons that I had. I can't remember very much of what I actually studied at school or ended up using very much of it. And that just seems ridiculous to me, that you spend that amount of time. So my take on the school system at the moment is we've kind of got a system that's very, very slowly evolved out of the Victorian era, and has not really translated into a rapidly changing world. It's almost like, in people's fear of the way that the world is changing, that they try to control that by making school more like it used to be than what it kind of needs to be. And I think that's where things like, I don't know whether you come across the idea of project-based learning, but with project-based learning, you have a real context and a real purpose sitting behind it. And it might be that you're making something or doing something, but with a real bit of edge. So at the end of the project, you'll be sharing that learning, or performing, or doing something that takes it beyond just you and your teacher, or you and a friend that you're working with. So if I give you a couple of examples, we had a sort of lovely project where we worked in my last school in Plymouth with Kia, the building contractors, and it was around getting the kids to design the scaffolding wrap for this new building that was going up in Plymouth. So the kids had a real challenge of design that had some edge, because they weren't playing at doing something; they were actually doing it for a real purpose. Another example, we had some great boat builders over from over the other side of the water from the school, because the school was literally about 300 meters, 200 meters from the ferry port, from the sea. So our year sevens, our 12-year-olds used to be able to walk to France. And that was really cool. They'd go down at the end of the day and walk across to France, go over as foot passengers, buy things over there, bring them back, maybe even cook with the food that they brought over there. But with being so close to the sea, that one of the interesting projects we had was renovating some old 1950s Firefly dinghies, and we had a group of kids working with real craftsmen, and they worked with this lovely guy and lovely woman who helped them to renovate this boat, and they literally had to strip it right back, do loads of repairs, gradually got it to a point where they could then test it in the water. But if you really want edge, you really want to listen when you know that you're going to be sailing the boat. It's not like this is a pretend project. We're making a boat out of cardboard, and we'll put a paper boat in a bath and see if it floats and for how long. It was like, now we've actually got to sail the boat that we've made, and so you really do want to make sure you're listening to the the people that you're working with that kind of expertise. So I think that's where I would love to see more authentic learning, and sort of moving away from things just being out of a book, but being realistic, and kind of that sense of great learning entering the muscle. There's a Papua New Guinea phrase that is, learning stops being rumour when it enters the muscle. And I think that's, you have those kind of experiences, and you don't need to remember. You've understood something so deeply that it's not about just knowing something or having a skill. You have an understanding of something then conceptually that is kind of different. And I think, unfortunately, we're losing that in schools at the moment with teaching to the test. And that's not because we've not got great teachers, but because they're under so much pressure to get some of the outcomes sometimes that we miss the big picture about what learning is really about.
Yeah, yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there, kind of with the teachers. You know, I don't think there's a such thing as a bad teacher. I think it tends to be just a bad situation.
Yeah.
And you know, I know a couple of teachers, and kind of whenever I ask them, kind of, you know, what's the exciting stuff you're getting up to with the kids, and kind of, you know, what is it you're actually doing, and how are you making them ready for when they come out of school and into the real world. And they turn around and say, we don't even think that far, to be honest. You know, we can lie and say we do, but fundamentally all we're doing is we're thinking for the next test and the next test and then the exams and so on and so on. And I guess it's sad. It's sad because I don't feel let down by the school system. Sorry, go on, Dave.
No, I think that one of the sad things about it, Danny, is that when you look at a 3 or 4 year old, they naturally, they're very curious, and they're into everything. You don't have to get them to be, to motivate them to be excited by something. They'll find something exciting in just about anything. It's the way that they're more interested in the box at Christmas than the present, or playing with the wrapping paper, or they just find things in the way that they see the world. And I think there's a danger that that gets lost in school. So it's inherently there in very young kids. And I agree with you. It's not the teacher. We've got great teachers, so people who work so hard, so dedicated for the young people. But what we do need to do is to give people to build in space, not just to learn a skill or to know something, but to create really meaningful experience. So if you're somebody who's growing up and maybe hasn't had some of the life chances that some people have had, you've got a chance to start to feel good about yourself because you realise you've made something for your community. Those boats that were renovated, they then became part of a sailing program for the community. So those kids felt really proud of what they'd achieved. And it can happen at a young age. I've seen 8 and 9 year olds, sort of colouring parents on an exhibition night when they're say, "Oh, you come over and I want to tell you about what I've made and what I've been doing and what," and not just their own parents, but just people they don't know, but they're so excited and so proud of what they've done. And then the more they learn to do that, the more they develop those kind of that confidence to speak in front of groups, which I know I really lacked. And I think many people find that intimidating. But if you do it at a young age and you develop those skills to learn how to navigate a project, to deal with not knowing, a good education means you know what to do when you don't know. I think those are things that we could do more to support our teachers with, and more to support our kids with by not having some of the rigidity in the system that we've got.
So I guess I agree, and I'm just sat listening to you here now, David, and I'm thinking, how do we make that change? Kind of, and while this isn't predominantly about the school system, this podcast, I think there's a lot of interchangeable between the school and education system and the corporate environment. And I think, take out the people who's in there, the demographic of people, the age. I think what you still see in corporate environments is fundamentally what you still see in schools. The kids are sat down in front of a teacher, the teacher's talking at them and trying to engage, but fundamentally it is that thing of once you leave the class or the training room, how much of it is remembered? Not a lot. How much do they care about it? Probably even less. So, but how do we make that shift from kind of where the schools are now to where we want them to be, and kind of what's the biggest barriers with that?
I think we've got to think differently about the process of how to get the best out of people. The way that I'm working for at the moment, they talk about engaging and enabling. There's a real focus on that for them, and it's not just sort of superficial in terms of a couple of words, but it really thinking through about, well, what does that mean in terms of a culture that you're trying to create. And I think so. If I think of my moments when I've been worst as a leader, it's often because I feel like I know more, or I really want to tell people things. And the deeper, and I'm not saying you should never tell people things. That's sometimes really helpful, but the more profound and memorable and lifelong aspects of learning really come from that sense of discovery and creating the environment where it's okay to discover things. Means it's the antithesis of a school culture where you're supposed to get things right. Teachers are supposed to know things and kids are supposed to get things right. So the kids start trying to guess what's in the teacher's heads. The teachers try to tell them more. The head teachers are trying to tell the teachers how to tell the kids. It's really flawed because it's not really about learning. And I think that isn't about schools like you're suggesting. That's is true for the corporate sector. And being an entrepreneur, it's how do you develop that culture of being excited by what you don't know. Or giving the space to enable people to really think about, I wonder what this might be. Bo Lotto, the neuroscientist I work with, used to talk about why and what if. Why is that happening, and what if it's to do with this? And I think that's where it's like there's an element of mindset that you're really trying to facilitate, so that when something doesn't work out, and obviously there's that edge in business, there's the edge in education, but we've got to think really carefully about it. We can't say, yeah, it's okay to get things wrong, and then it plainly isn't.
Yeah.
So I think it's turning I think that's what a good project does, is it turns it from being right and wrong into that sort of that aspect of what have I learned. And as long as I don't keep on making the same mistakes over and over again, and I'm genuinely moving forward based on the experiences I've had, then that's a great thing. That's a great outcome. And if you start to realize that actually things can go wrong, and it's a good thing sometimes when things go wrong, some great things can come out of that. I think it makes you a stronger person and more resilient and probably more productive in the life, because it's so easy to get stifled by that fear of failure.
So but I guess when I'm thinking back to kind of and just listening to kind of the stories which you mentioned there about kind of with the boats and stuff, I guess it sounds like your approach is very experiential. Kind of a lot of experience design is kind of cooked into it. Whether that's directly or indirectly, but it seems like it's heavily built within that. And I guess one of my questions is I was having a debate. No, it wasn't really a debate. It was a conversation. I was having a conversation with one of my friends. I was like, look, here's the thing. If you have two teachers and you have one teacher who sticks by the book and follows everything to the letter, and then you have one teacher who bends to rules, changes the environment, induces more, brings in more play, more curiosity, and both teachers fail. The one who fails and who did things differently would be the one for the chop, not necessarily the one who followed everything by the book. Mm. So, is that a fair statement, or would you say that's not?
I don't know, and it's an interesting question. I guess there's a couple of things that I start to think about when I'm sort of processing that. One is, I think there's an important part about being in integrity as a teacher, and some people, may genuinely believe that I should be doing things by the book. They have that's their kind of process for how they work. and it's more structured, and and there's an element where some aspects of that can work really well for them. I mean, the silly example would be to say you don't want to learn to cross the road experientially.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, that didn't work. Oh no, you can't try again.
Yeah.
So that's not a great strategy. But the other, if I go to the flip, I feel like I love that in terms of that being that pioneer or initiating something. That really plays to my strength. So if I'm not being like that and working in an environment where I can do that, it's not going to work for me because I'm more of an initiator. And then there's probably a group in the middle that they kind of really great at mutating from one form to another. And so part of that what will work isn't just what's going to be judged by someone else to be successful. It's also how you judge yourself to live the life you want to lead. And I think I've seen plenty of people over the years in all walks of life that they're just doing their job, but they're certainly not being in a great way when they're doing that.
Yeah.
When they're existing. So, and I think the other part of it is being confident about what sort of success do you value. There's a lovely sculpture by Jan Faber, based on the Birdman of Alcatraz, who apparently said when he was allowed to leave Alcatraz and was asked, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to measure the clouds. And I love that statement. And if you have a look at the sculpture by this guy Jan Faber, it's this bloke standing up and with his arms stretched up with this ruler, like he's measuring the clouds. And I think there is something about, if you're trying to put can you put a value on everything? Is it just about the value of the test, or is it about actually that person, maybe the kid in who worked with a really interesting teacher who did different things? For some of those kids, maybe that would have sparked something in them that actually maybe I didn't do well in the test, but I learned something about myself, and actually that stood stayed with me in a different way. So it's a really good question, though.
Yeah, I just think kind of, and I'm playing devil's advocate on this one, Dave, to be honest, is, so say we go to more of this kind of, this future focused and kind of, giving our young people, or we're just giving our people the skills what we need to kind of exceed at life. And we go more towards this kind of, like you say, this project-based kind of, this focused on project-based, and how would that look? Because, I guess we know the way this assessment works in schools is go through school, have an exam, maybe a bit of coursework, exam, and then kind of you walk out and you go, right, ta-da, there you go, you've passed A, B, C, whatever. So if you could kind of rip that completely up, how would you, and I'm going to call it an assessment because, but how would you do that? How would you, if I said to you, right, Dave, change the school system and change how we can justify whether someone's going to be successful and how we've prepped them for life, how would that look?
I'm just thinking as well about the other question as well. It's really sticking in my head, that one. I think you are more vulnerable if you do things differently, because I think what happens is that if something goes wrong, it's easy to pin it on the fact you've done something different. And I think it takes time to evolve different practices. And I think also it makes a difference about who you're around and what the climate is and how it judges those things. So, thank you for asking that. Well, that's going to haunt me for a good few hours after this. I'll be thinking about that one. But in terms of assessment, I think that the lovely thing about the word assessment is the root of it is to sit alongside. And so in many ways, you kind of want to be alongside more. I think, rather than assessing less, if you look if you go to watch really little children working with an amazing early years teacher, and I've been really privileged to work right across the board from, sort of, preschool through to right through secondary, and I absolutely in awe of sort of the reception and preschool teachers, because to me it's like the dark arts. It's like herding cats. I get what you're supposed to do, but it's really impressive the way those teachers work with a young person. But they kind of they let the kid get into something, and the great teachers there for me, they come in alongside, and when the kids absorb, that's when they're asking their questions. That's when they're stretching the learning, and so it's got a real context. And I think that's what happens as you get older. And I think again, when you whether it's in the workplace, at university, at college, or in secondary school, however old you are, what I think good teachers do is they have a set of criteria that they're working with, and that it's not hidden to the student. The young person is aware of what great looks like, and then it's a conversation around, where do you think you are at the moment, and how do it's assessment to improve rather than to prove where you are. And it's that bit of how, not just knowing what you've got to do to get better, but how you would go about it. And I think again, that's what I think great teachers and mentors do. They and there isn't a set way of doing that either. I was thinking, I watched this film the other day of a guy that taught me to run the rescue boat of when I worked in France. And the really interesting thing about it is a bloke called Jim Shapter. I don't think he's alive anymore. And Jim was quite a hard taskmaster, but he would tell you exactly what was needed, why it was important. He'd show you, but then he'd let you struggle, and he'd make you feel a bit uncomfortable. But I think he judged that, depending on who you were, of just knowing how far he could push you. And I think what sometimes a good teacher does is they see the potential in somebody before they see it in themselves. And particularly, I think that's true of good leaders as well. Good people in business, they see something in something before maybe others do.
Yeah, I think it's like, it becomes this personalised approach more than anything. I think I was having a conversation recently, and I was with one of my clients, and we was talking about, we need to put this in place and we need to put that in place. I'm like, no, you need peer-to-peer, you need a community, you need a sharing, a place to share. You don't need the next. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm big on tech, digital, and kind of innovative approaches, but I'm much bigger on kind of peer-to-peer and community. And it's an interesting one. But I guess one of the questions which just kind of sprung to mind listening there is, we know kids and tend to be naturally curious, and I'm lucky in that respect, and I think it's down to my parents and the people who's around me. I've kind of kept my curiosity, and I kind of say, the best question is that kind of why is it that way? Why can it not be done this way? And kind of that thing of how can we break it to build it again? But do you think, why is it you think, I mean you might not, but why is it that as children we have this bags and bags of curiosity and play, and then when we get older and we have to kind of go into this corporate environment, why do you think it kind of gets overlooked?
I think there's a Chinese artist, Ai Weiwei, who says that creativity can only be unlearned. And I think that's probably the nature of that, and of what's happening in that situation, of why young people, it's like being curious is part of your job description when you're 4 years old. It's not like an optional extra that you've had to work at. It's who you are. And again, if you think about play is a very natural way of learning, and not the sort of play of of a game with rules, but that playfulness of that you see in an animal like a kitten or a little puppy. I was watching some foxes the other morning, the fox cubs, 5 of them with their mother, and you could just tell they were having a blast, and they were jumping up on a fence and rolling around and all of this thing, and that's how they're naturally learning. And I think that that's where sometimes school can be unhelpful, or a culture in a business or organization can sometimes be unhelpful too, because sometimes it will just it takes away that natural process of being curious. And I can see in a 6-year-old in many schools in England that they're already playing the game where they've worked out the teacher's asking a question, and it's a retrieval question of where they've got to guess what the teacher's got in their head. There's a guy I used to work with, Rick Meek, and he talked about this idea of having killer questions. And so rather than the retrieval question of who killed Tybalt, the sort of killer question is who's responsible for Tybalt's death. And one's got a very simple answer. The other one you could spend weeks talking about. And I think that's, again, in terms of how you build that for young people, for that culture in a business. I was up in I went to a garage sale yesterday. We were just driving by in this place called Traverse City in North Michigan, out in the middle of nowhere. And Lake Michigan is huge, incredible place. And he was talking about just different ways that they created within their company to improve it. And one of them was that there was an expectation that everybody shared an idea. I think it was every quarter of something that was kind of bugging them, annoying them, but not just what was annoying them, but what they thought might help and make a difference. And he was describing how in this, with this engineering company, this guy had said, it really bugs me that this, I don't know, it was a bolt or something that they were making, this piece they were making, and it had been manufactured the same on both sides. And it said, but when you actually screw this thing in or put it in the machine, you only see one side. So why do we make it like that? It would save the amount of time is needed to go into this machine process. And this guy said, this was somebody who was on, working about, I don't know, $12 an hour or something. It was not a highly paid job. He was then saving tens of thousands of pounds every year. I mean, it was over £10,000 a month. So over a year and years to come, huge savings he's made. And, it just gave that as an example. But do we really enable and engage people into that way of thinking and capitalize on the great ideas that everybody has? And that difference of seeing things differently is always something I feel like I've learned a lot from kids, because they've got this wonderful kind of naive way of seeing things that it opens up the world in a different way than you were perhaps thinking as a teacher who's trying to make a point.
Yeah, I think one of the things we do as adults is put a process there. If a child was to say, why is it we're doing that? We just kind of say it. It's a genuine question where, if we was to put this into a corporate environment, there'd be a process in where you've got to answer the question. There's a filter you've got to put on it so you don't appear that you're coming across as aggressive with, calling somebody's idea bad. Then it'll go through this chain of email Bob to email Sue and it becomes this kind of really like drawn out process when basically, like I say, it's just a question. It's just a question.
Yeah. And there's something really powerful about asking questions. again, in a really good project, you tend to have this driving question that driving question that people can really inquire into, and really really make, it kind of holds the whole thing together.
Yeah.
And it makes you stand back, and it's when somebody asks you a good question, you tend to you naturally just re-examine things, I think.
So, I mean, I kind of want to get into kind of the schools which you've created. So maybe you could quickly tell us about what they are, and then I can kind of start getting into that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, one of them's I co-founded a school called School for Inspiring Talents. It's based in Devon, and it's for young people that maybe have had a very hard time in the school system, don't fit in particularly easily, maybe have been excluded, and typically won't be able to get a place in any other setting. So we myself and a group of others, we were trying to set this up, trying to get local authority and central government to fund it. And unfortunately, although we got to an interview with the Department for Education, we weren't successful. And then managed to be able to obtain some funding from a wonderful person who wanted to invest in the school. And Mark Escott, who is the other co-founder, Mark did an amazing job at then bringing that school to life and reality, and is making a huge difference. It's the UK's first trauma-informed school, and he's doing some amazing things, as are his team at the school. It was lovely to be a part of the starting of that, and seeing something grow from an idea into a reality. The other schools, school in Plymouth School for Creative Arts. Now, I was there for 6 years, and again, it grew from, we had just over 90 kids on day one, and over 1,000 students now, and seeing that project-based approach take hold there was a wonderful experience. Really, really challenging, because you're kind of making it as you're going. The rate of growth and expansion was, provided some real challenges of things that you thought were working well, and then actually as you scaled up, needed to be re-examined, and just that process of the amount of staff that you ended up having in your team, of helping them build a picture of the purpose of the school, enabling them to feel that they could kind of really do the things that they were great at, but also trying to create a thread that held it all together. It was a lovely privilege, very demanding, and something that I learned a lot from, as I have done with all the schools that I've been involved in. I was involved in a really interesting school, village school, called Blackhorton, and we did some fantastic things there. Sometimes you can get things to go far enough that even when it doesn't fit the existing framework, people can still see it. And the Ofsted inspector there said that, writing the report on your school's like trying to paint a Rembrandt on the back of a postage stamp, because he said your school doesn't fit the criteria, but he could see it was great, and you could see it in the kids, and that was special. That was the school where I first met Bo Lotto. He was a parent at the school. He was this guy as a neuroscientist, and we created the world's youngest published scientist. And Bo came to speak to me. And he came in to speak to the kids first of all about being a scientist, because as a school we were trying not just to to learn science. We were trying to be the scientist, be the artist. And he talked to the kids about what it was like, and then he came up with this idea and shared it with me about, well, maybe we could get young kids to create their own original science experiment. And it was absolutely fabulous. And we sort of immersed his specialism. Well, one of his specialisms is around perception and about the way that he did lots of work with bees about the way they would see the world. So we got the kids to imagine being bees and to move around as if they were bees and it was very, very playful. And then we started getting them to solve puzzles. And what Bo was working with the kids around was the idea that, when you create a science experiment, you create a puzzle for the bees, and then you watch how they play that game, and you see what you can learn from that observation. And so the question that we had for the kids was, well, what's the game that you're going to get to create for the bees? And bearing in mind they can't play football and you can't explain the rules of Monopoly, you've got some challenges there to think about a puzzle that doesn't require language to be set up. And the kids came up with some great ideas, and the naivety that they were coming up with was generating questions that I know I couldn't have done on my own if I would have been in a room a long time to think of anything as good as what they were coming up with. And I remember one of the kids saying, "Can bees count?" I thought, God, what a great question. And then Bo would be answering as if he was the sort of walking embodiment of a literature review and saying, "Yeah, well, I know somebody who's working, out in California. They've done some research on this, and actually, yeah, they can kind of count, but not in terms of 1, 2, 3 and things like that." But long story short, we got the kids created a question, an original experiment, and Bo acted as a sort of a technician to help them handle the bees, and they got some really great data out of it. And obviously, because it wasn't like a school experiment where it's a recipe and you really know what's going to happen. Nobody knew if it was going to work or what was going to be the outcome of this. And these kids made some findings about the bees and the way they were seeing things and the importance of space. And then they had their work published in an academic peer-reviewed journal. So we had 8, 9, and 10-year-olds sort of working at a kind of a master's level through this sort of carefully scaffolded approach, but it was so playful and so much fun. But yeah, that gives you some information about some of the schools that I've been in, and the one that I'm in now. We're developing online schools, and the people down here in Way have done some great work already around that. And to you were talking about personalization and help. I think it's helping people really draw on that personal aspect of personalization. And the recognizing that some people's life experiences might mean that they need to learn in a different way. So this school literally has a teacher or a mentor there 24/7, right through the night or any time. And they do that to support, the youth that maybe are in a position where actually I really feel like I need to stay at home because I'm so worried about my dad, or where my mum is, or what's going on, or actually my own, to support my own health needs. Maybe I can't actually physically get into the school, and so I'm really enjoying that opportunity to consider what an online school could be, and how by doing something differently, it's pushing me to think differently about how you might support a learner. So like I know in the school, I spend a lot of time thinking about the physical environment and working with teachers around that. And you might work with some young people around it, obviously, as well, because they've got you want them to own and engage into that process. But what do you do when you haven't got a building? But I think there's still the same principles still apply. And so I've been working on on how we could be having conversations with young people so that they maybe have a think about, just like I would enjoy having a meeting where I'm walking, or that I'm not always sat down, or that, for me, if I need to really concentrate, I won't be by a window because I just get distracted by everything that's going on outside. And that's different for different people, obviously, but helping build an awareness so that people can create a new understanding for themselves and take responsibility.
Wow. Okay, so I've got a few just thoughts, but started just firing off in my head then. So I think, what an awesome challenge that is. Like,
Yeah,
that's the type of work what people would love to do. I think that's something what would personally get me out of bed every morning. I know that.
definitely. Because I mean, one of the things, Danny, is you don't. I would hate to see, like you were saying about technology earlier, I'd hate to see kids plugged into a computer. But the fact that they haven't got a building means that, okay, I'm going to learn about habitats today. Right, well, where do I go? I don't open a book. I don't look online. I go outside, and how you could have an online school that uses that kind of blended approach, but is really agile and tailored towards a personalization and personal need is, I think, ever so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking kind of. I mean, when the tech is needed, it needs to be kind of one of like a consumer grade experience. Remove the friction from the tech.
Yeah.
I kind of use this thing of kind of, no one's ever told you how to use Facebook or Instagram or insert wherever. You kind of just picked it up because it's seamless.
Yeah.
It's frictionless.
You see, the trouble is that if you introduce a new platform or piece of kit for a teacher, their immediate response is, well, I need a course to do that. And it's exactly, you're exactly right. I didn't go on the iPlayer course, the Facebook course. You play and you learn and you share and you search, you're curious, and that's not to say that it's not not helpful to sit alongside someone, but I think sometimes the things we think we need aren't necessarily what we actually do.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that this, probably, I don't know how to put this, so I'm just going to say how it is. But the older generation putting their problems on the new generation's challenge. So, it's like you say, bringing that in and the teachers, I'm using old generation, but it's not. But I need to go on a course. Well, actually, modern learning, modern workplace, whatever you want to call it, actually, they're removing the courses as quick as possible. It's performance support. Yeah. It's kind of, actually, just tell me what I need to know, I think it's Bowen. Bowen used simple things like a checklist. There's a great book called The Checklist Manifesto.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, they use checklists as a performance support. Like, we can tell you how to use a plane, but you really don't need to know. You just need to know how to make it work in its day to day. So here's a checklist or here's performance support.
And sometimes as well, if you limit, I think there was a really great teacher that I worked with, a guy called Ash Todd, and Ashley, he got some a 3D printer and some new software for it, and rather than get it, and he'd already had a play, and rather than him sitting down and teaching the kids how to use it, he just said, well, could you go and play with it, see what you find out, and they found a whole load of different things than he would have found out. So it not only supported their learning in a deeper way, but also it supported his own learning by him having the confidence of somebody who was really good with technology, but still could stand back and let the learning happen.
Yeah, and it becomes this kind of, I call it, we'll use reverse mentoring, but it's not a great term, but it's kind of this reverse, like the younger generation of picking stuff up and kind of, it becomes this search and discover rather than this directed, here, go here, this is what you got to do. And I think that's kind of where we see some of the best ideas, right, in life. We see a challenge and we go, actually, I'm not going to tell you how to fix that challenge. You go and remix, and I'm using Amy Baval's term here, go and remix and figure out a way. Just because that tool's made for that, it doesn't mean you can't tweak it and make it something for something else.
Yeah, definitely. And that's not to say you don't need to learn, some basic skills and and develop those so that you can apply. But sometimes by having that context of I really want to be able to do this, it drives you to learn those things differently. Whether it's writing through blogging about something you do care about, rather than being asked to artificially write a letter to somebody that's imagined, and those kind of things that sometimes we do in school. Yeah, I think it's interesting how you blend and develop that in a way that works for different people. And some people are very good at catching things just in the ether, and some people need a different structure to enable them to get to the point where they feel really ready to play. It's a fascinating part of our uniqueness as human beings.
It's just, I can't help. So I'm doing a talk in June, and I'm talking about how we need to be looking at a human-centered design approach with experience design and then a consumer-grade experience. It's like this three-way thing what I've designed, my flow of how I design. And I can't help but think this is kind of where it sounds where it would be a great example. But I guess the thing what's jumping out of my mind is it's kind of, you're giving the children or whoever, it's a bit like shaping your own adventure, design your own journey. It's like, I don't know, I'm kind of, I shouldn't really be ideating when I'm doing a podcast. But it kind of becomes this kind of shape your own adventure, design your own journey. It's, I don't know.
What I love that just happened then, Danny, is that, there's those, you see, there's a moment then when you become curious, you start to make connections in ideas, and that's what as somebody who's skilled at interviewing, that's what you have to do. But there's that lovely energy of, actually, I can't help but get excited by something. Sometimes I've just seen something that I really need to think about, or to say, or to talk through. And I think that's there's an energy that comes from that human-centered approach, where if your needs are being met, where you've got a sense of being valued, there's a sense of attention, or whether it's social connection, I've got a sense of control in my life, because nobody likes to feel everything's completely chaotic. But if you start to have those human needs being met, you create the environment then for all those other things to really work. And again, I think in business and in schools, it's easy to lose sight of that as a platform, in terms of needs. And it's, if you really pay attention to those things, then you draw out you maximize the resource that people undoubtedly are.
Wow. I'm gonna be thinking about this problem tonight. I know for a fact I am now. It's not a problem. I'm gonna be thinking about your challenge. I'm just gonna be scribbling. I know for a fact I am. But I guess So I mean, let's move a bit sideways. So these next couple of questions, Dave, are going to be a bit quick fire-ish. But they're not. To be honest, if you want to go deeper in them, feel free, and you can apply them to kind of your personal or your professional life. It's either or.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the first question is, if you was to give a book as a gift to 5 people, what book would it be?
Oh, that's really hard. Oh, I don't. Oh, I really don't. I really don't know. There's so many books that. Oh, and I'm a really slow reader as well. That's the other thing. So I tend to have a book for about. I read quite a lot, but I read bits of things rather than the whole book.
Yeah, I'm the same. So I have dyslexia and dyspraxia. So
yeah,
I'm the same. I enjoy reading.
I struggle though with, even if this was a film, we were talking about which film would you get to 5 people, because I probably would choose a film for the person that sometimes you watch something and you think, oh wow, that's great, so and so, they're going to really like that. And I think it's maybe similar for me with a book. I'm really struggling to think of one that I was.
Okay. Can I change the question then?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
And these questions are particularly hard So do not worry if you struggling to think of them. That's the idea, I guess. If you used to
Yeah,
give
yeah,
a gift to a child, what gift would it be
yeah.
and why?
Um, I I think a gift that I could create a little story around. So one of the I bought some gifts yesterday for some children because being over here in America, I wanted something small that I could take back, and I went to this lovely place called Petoskey in northern Michigan and by Lake Michigan, and they have these Petoskey stones, and they have fossils of the coral that are in the stone, and some of them have been polished. So I bought those. But the reason I bought that stone was because when I went to leave for America, my girls had and my wife had hidden three little stones in my bag. I didn't know they were there, and so when I opened them up, there were these three beautiful stones. One that was sort of shimmery, and Iris, my youngest, she said, "Whenever it shimmers, Dad, you'll be thinking of me." And Edith, my next oldest, she puts on a little picture of America, New York City, Niagara Falls, and Plymouth on this little map which were places that we talked about maybe going to together. And then my wife had Claire had put in a lovely heart-shaped stone. So I think having that, there's something about the story and the narrative that goes with things. A pebble that I can take back and share my story, my journey of going to America. And I know one of the stories I'm going to tell them is I had the chance to go with some friends to Florida. Glenn and Beth, who run the Way schools, they've started. I mean, I thought I was doing quite well starting two schools. I chatted to them the other day. They've started over 50 schools. They're amazing people. And I went to stay in Glenn's house in this place called Gasparilla Island, and we've been fishing, and it was absolutely amazing. I saw a manatee there, a sea cow, um, and it was just incredible. But it was Iris's birthday, and so because it was 5 hours time difference, I wanted to ring her before school started. So we'd been up quite late till about 1 o'clock, and I'd gone to sleep, set my alarm and to get up at 10 to 2, and I crept outside, and so I went to slide open the door, and just before I started to open the door, I could hear this sound outside. It sounded quite loud. Anyway, I slid the door open, and you could hear this. And I was thinking, God, that's big. And I quickly pulled the door closed, thinking, what the hell is that? So I managed to find a light to put on outside, and was looking out through the window. Couldn't see anything. But I could still hear this sound of, and when the taxi driver, the Uber driver, had taken us to the station, had been to get the lift over to the island, had told us about these huge constrictors. I was thinking, but it sounds like a rattlesnake. And earlier that night, we'd seen a scorpion, the first scorpion I'd ever seen. So I was a little bit on edge, and it's like, my God, this is huge. So I slid the door open again, and I could hear this, and I was thinking, bloody hell, that is one big snake. That is pretty huge. And anyway, as I got outside and I started to sort of process what was going on, I realized it was the sprinkler under the house. It was watering the grass, going. But yeah, that's how my strength is my imagination, because I can use it to create really, really interesting things. But my Achilles heel is certainly my imagination, especially at night, in the dark, in a new place.
Oh wow! That is brilliant. That is brilliant. So, I mean, it was going to lead me on to the next question. How have you found the transition from the UK over to the States? Like, but
It's been great, actually. People have been so friendly. It's been there have been certain things that you like in Michigan that you really notice because it gets so cold here. I hadn't realised just how cold it gets in the winter, and but the sense of space here is incredible. The friendliness of people. Um, but I think the thing that I've been most left with is just how inspiring. You as a pioneer, you kind of look for other pioneers, other people who are initiators or architects or who design things that you think are great. And it's felt like a huge privilege to be working with a team of people at Way here because they really, really care about the young people. They don't just, it's not just a job to them. And they've done the most amazing things and they're pushing the boundaries left, right, and centre in a way that I love to be going on all over, not just the UK, but all over the world. They're really great people.
wow. I mean, I guess we'll do one more quick fire round, actually, if that's okay with you, Dave. I just want to be mindful of your time, really.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So let's just pretend you can have a billboard and it's outside of a stadium and 1 million people are going to empty out that stadium in 5 minutes' time. What message or what would you put on that billboard for 1 million people to see?
I don't know quite how I'd frame it, but it'd be something like, there's nothing missing in you. And I think it would be something like that because I think so often we strive to, we place like happiness as a destination, or I'll be successful when I've done these things, Whereas I really believe for people to be their most creative, to be their most inspiring, they've got to connect to the fact that there's actually absolutely nothing missing in them, and there never was. There might be loads of things that they want to develop and get better at and do differently and all of those kind of things. But the idea that there's nothing missing in you, I think that would be a great message to get out to 1 million people.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. I like that a lot. So, I guess if I was to say to you, who's a free? I mean, assuming people are active on social media and whatnot, who would you recommend the 3 people everybody should be following?
Oh, that's a good question. One would definitely be Amy Burrell. Amy is, I just love her posts. They range from profound to profoundly ridiculous and humorous, and she's just got this amazing mind and is very, very playful. I love her book, Intention. She would definitely be one of them. Andrew Brewerton, I'm not sure whether I'm not sure whether I would. Andrew was somebody if I had to recommend you having a conversation with someone, Andrew would definitely be one, but I'm going to hold that one back from it. I definitely follow Pep Guardiola or one of the Man City website. Are you blue or red?
I'm a red.
Well, there you go. Maybe you've got more to learn then. No, I was sharing with somebody the other night about how painful it used to be in the 90s. I remember 99 when you got the treble.
Yes.
And it just dreading seeing my friends who were United fans. I'll rub that one in a little bit. And Steve Wheeler, Steve's post, I don't know whether you come across him. He does a lot around e-learning, and it's a bit like what you were talking about earlier. He always drives through not just about the technology, but about something that's much more about community and people. And he shares those things in a really personal way, which I I always really enjoy. I remember his posts, which is great.
Okay, and I'll put all them names and stuff in the show notes as well, definitely.
Like even Pep.
I'll put them in there and then just put a line for it. So yeah. But I guess yeah. Let's just wrap up. I guess so. If you used to give, I don't know, 5 tips to somebody either coming into, I mean, I kind of wanted to ask a question about what you think the future of education is, but I feel like you're already there in a way. But I guess if it was someone who's coming into education or coming into the corporate environment, what 5 top tips would you give, Dave?
I think the first one would be about keeping on working on being in integrity. I like the idea that integrity is a mountain with no top. It's not something that you can just say, yeah, I've got integrity. You have to keep on working at it, and that not just being your word, but valuing your word, honouring your word, trying to do the right thing. So being in integrity would be my first and foremost. I think so much happens if you do that. I think being playful, and the flip side of it, sort of my second and third kind of go together, is recognizing when you're adding too much significance in. I think sometimes that can be, you can take yourself too seriously, get wrapped up in your own ego and all those kind of things. So I think it's really, that being playful is a great antidote to taking yourself too seriously. Whether you need a rattlesnake or not is another thing. But I think there's one about not going slowly. I think sometimes you can rationalize why not to do things. So going fast, going for it, just, that would be another bit of advice. And my final bit would be not to get hooked into the money side of it, because I think some of the best experiences I've had, and things that have later led to me getting some really well-paid jobs have been because I didn't just follow a linear path. I followed my nose. I went with the things that sounded to me like I would learn more. Like coming here, I didn't know what it was going to be like, but I was really excited by what I was going to learn by coming to work with Way.
Okay. Perfect. Great. Thank you. I guess there's just kind of, 2 more questions and then we're done. I mean, at the beginning of the beginning of the podcast, I asked you to name some numbers, pick some numbers. Them numbers tally up to some random list of items on my list. Okay, so the items which you've got are a spoon, a slipper, a stop sign, a hanger, and a boombox. And the idea is you're on a beach, maybe let's call it a little island, deserted island, just you. What are you doing with these items, Dave?
Well, I think I'm going to be singing with Amy.
Okay.
I think that I think with the spoon, I'll play spoons. I'm probably best not singing. She's got a good voice, hasn't she? So have you seen those things done on YouTube with the sort of history and taking pop songs from the 80s? I love those. So that would be fun. That would be good. I think I'd be singing with her. I think there'd have to be some sort of competition with my kids and my wife as well. Just something random. I'm sure I'd leave that bit to Iris to design, because she will come up with the most ridiculous competition and it will therefore be the most fun. So that would be something that I'd be doing. And if I could make something to catch fish as well, I really enjoyed that when I went. I've been fishing for years, and when we went to Florida. And that was really that was a special thing to do, but I'd have to turn up something like to turn the boombox up so loud the sonic boom would bring some fish up to the water, so I could just pick them up and then chuck them on the barbie.
I love it. So I guess going full circle and coming to the end now, I asked you the question at the beginning, Dave, when you was a teacher, what is it you wanted to be when you grow up? And as you know, we're constantly growing. We never really stop developing, and we should constantly be challenging and trying to be better. If I was to ask you this question now, Dave, what is it you want to be when you grow up? What would you say?
I think I still want to be James T. Kirk. Yeah, I've got to practice my forward rolls. That's all. I'm nearly there.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, where can people find out about the stuff, what you're up to? How can we support you? Where can we follow you?
Oh yeah, no, please. So you can follow me on Twitter, that Dave Strudwich. But if you want to know more about Way and the great people there, just go to wayprogram.net. And there's loads of things that explain about the schools, the mission of the great group of people that are involved there. And like I said, we're just in the process of setting up a American school online where you can study for the American high school diploma anywhere in the world, with a view that that could open up things for some young people to come over to the States to study. And also, that sort of level of personalization and agility in learning, project-based approach, all those things that I've been talking about today sort of come together in one funky place.
Awesome. Well, Dave, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think I could have easily talked with you for another hour and a half, to be honest.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you, Danny. Even though you're a red, I've enjoyed it too. So, and if we would have had another hour and a half, we could have talked about the merits of different managers and different directions and types of buses to park and all sorts of things.
I think maybe what we could definitely do is we could definitely save that for maybe a part 2. Definitely.
Part 2, okay. Okay, awesome. I'll look for that.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Dave. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.